as I'm sure it is apparent, AI is taking over pretty much every industry, and lots of people are losing their jobs, young and old. People are going to college for degrees that they can no longer use when they graduate, and I think it's affected all of us. Yeah.
Yeah, especially, I think Gen Z is most aware of this, and we're really trying to figure out what we need to do to move forward with it and work in this new world.
Right. Is it going to mostly take away jobs, you think, or create new ones? Because there has to be jobs.
That's the big question, right? Like, I'm sure there's some industries like yours. I mean, you're in real estate and you're very hands-on, and a lot of what you do is, personal. You're working with people on a personal level.
It's human. I mean,
right.
I mean, for better or worse.
It is. And I don't think that AI is to a point yet where it can take that away from you. But like what we're doing, we're creatives and we're, creating videos, and she's creating art. That is something that we're seeing AI kind of,
right,
steal away from people right now, as we're seeing so much AI art online.
AI was meant to, take the work away so that humans could focus on the art. And now it's, we're using it as a cheat code to make art easier and produce more, and
right,
and it cheapens it,
stealing away the work and the careers of actual artists.
And I won't say that it's art, actually, because the definition of art, it has to be produced by a human to elicit a certain emotion, and if it's not produced by a human, then there is no depth behind it, I guess.
What do you think? What have you been doing, or what do you think you will do to prevent AI from stealing your work, taking away your career?
Well, I mean, a big thing for me is modeling, and that's why I'm going to New York next month, because I feel like that's going to be my only chance to get modeling done before AI kind of like takes that over, and physical models become obsolete. And honestly, I don't think runway will ever be taken over by AI unless we get like holograms or something crazy like that. But I can't do runway in the first place because I'm too short. So I just do print, and print's already being taken over. They already have AI models, in printed publications, in magazines, and on billboards. And, sometimes they're not very honest about those models being not real people. And that's a whole other thing, creating really horrible industry standards for girls to grow up with. They're oh, buy our makeup and you'll look like this, but it's not a real person that they're showing to advertise that makeup or whatever it is. So
do you think there's space in the modeling industry to use it to your advantage, AI, or do you think it's you have to work around it?
I don't even know how you would.
I can't think of it
because unless you're the designer, if you're a fashion designer, maybe it's easier for you to get your name and your brand out there because you won't have to be hiring physical models, which is expensive. And
I guess you can use AI for a consultant in a way,
right? Like with photography, which we also do. I do photography and you do videography. Our job will never be obsolete, especially for weddings, because you'll always have to be there to capture the real memories.
That's a good point.
The editing side of things, I think, is much more under threat than the actual physical filming side of things.
No, I don't even honestly care about that, because I'm a little excited for AI to help me with my editing process, because I enjoy editing, but when you have to edit a gallery for a bride that's 1,000 pictures, that takes a long time to do. So if I can teach it my editing style and it can edit a gallery for me, I get that time back in my life.
Yeah.
I
imagine there's probably teams of editors that have been cut down to just a couple that use AI as a tool to fill out the rest of the workload.
Right.
But I don't think that the case yet is people are actual filmers. Cinematographers have lost their jobs yet, because you have to hold the camera and know how to move it, and rack focus.
Right. And we were just talking about the movie industry being like changed completely, because now like the case used to be, oh, this movie, this is a bunch of like, this is dumb because this movie is filled with CG. Like there's so much CGI in this movie. And now with AI coming in, it's going to be like, oh, this movie's so good. It has so much human made CG. Like there's no AI in it.
Yeah, finally CG artists are like the good guys.
Like CG is now considered an art because, AI movies are about to be, and already are.
There already are AI movies on Netflix.
Yeah, and I know I saw one on Disney Plus. I think they took it down. Maybe there was too much backlash. But
how do you feel like you can use it to your advantage?
Well, I use it for research all the time. I think AI is a great way to advance humanity. I just don't like it replacing humanity. And what I want to talk about today is what careers are most susceptible and least susceptible. And I would offer that real estate investment as a hands-on owner-operator is one of the, at least for the next 10 to 20 years, is one of the least susceptible to AI takeover. I don't think somebody can, I don't even think if there was a $1 million robot computer out there, it would not be able to successfully operate my portfolio, at least not as well as I operated. And I'm not bragging. I have 40 years of getting up every morning to a different problem. I mean, there's still things after 40 years in this industry, and it's a lot of them they come from humanity. I mean, it's like, how do you deal with a noise complaint from a next door neighbor who says that he thinks that the newlyweds that live next door are getting in physical fights, and then you ask the couple about it and they both deny it. And it goes on for weeks and weeks. And do you evict or, take some action against somebody that doesn't admit it? And then the tenant shows up, the female shows up with a black eye. All this has happened. And, it's how do you deal with that? I mean, if you're following a set of rigid rules that are based on inputted data that has never, that's never been, considered, or that's not something that an algorithm could literally figure out how to deal with it, then how do you navigate that? And that's an extreme example of something negative. How about somebody that's been a good tenant that's paid the rent every month? They've renewed with you 2 or 3 years. Then all of a sudden they lose their job. And you've got a policy that says you send them a late notice after the 5th. You send them an eviction notice after the 15th. You start the process. And, a computer is going to do that, or a AI-driven operator is going to do that. Whereas me, I would sit down with that particular tenant and understand the circumstances and make sure that there was communication going forward. But if they had a plan, even if that plan was, I'm going to get another job, I don't know how long it's going to take, but I'm looking, to me, I would say, okay, I'm not going to evict them. I'm not going to start that process yet. And I may say, you're going to be on a timeline. I can't, I'm not a charity, so I can't carry you for 60 days or 90 days or anything like that. But that's something that takes the human perspective. And literally, I was almost homeless in 2008. So I've been where some of these people have been. And, I've quit a job when I shouldn't have quit a job. And I've made myself get fired from a job that I probably should have kept for a while longer. And, so I don't, for jobs that require spontaneous decisions with little data to make a decision with, I think that, and that's my field. And that's, again, a hands-on operator, or jobs that require dexterity or some type of physical, process. I mean, robots will get better and better, but I was amused by watching. Did y'all see the Russian robot that Russian TV charted out onto the stage? Did y'all see that? It was just like a week ago.
Maybe.
I've seen a few recently. But
the ones that they put clothes on and they run.
That was 2 years ago.
Okay.
So Russia's great about all this. They have the greatest tank and they have the greatest. Then the wheel rolls off the tank when they're going down a procession. And Putin was like, they have the greatest car man. This was maybe 10 years ago. Putin's walking in an assembly line of new Russian-made vehicles, saying that we're better than Ford and Mercedes and all this. And he literally reaches to the door handle, and this is all on live TV, and the handle comes off. And it's like the guy that was standing next to him, who was like a general that was overseeing whatever this, not a free society. So there's strange involvements with the oligarchs in every aspect of anything that has to do with money over in Russia. But his look was like, that's not good. And, he's thinking, I'm going to probably fall out of a window. So they always push out that everything is great. So just about a week or two ago, they on Russian TV, live TV, they push out this robot that, in 2 or 3 years ago, they did have it looked like a robot and he was dancing and doing all this stuff. But somehow somebody snuck backstage and got a picture and they could see, the guy had taken off one layer of, I won't say clothing, but armor or whatever. And you could see skin. It was like his neck was there. So it was a human. And so the Chinese, in response to that, about 3 weeks ago, Elon Musk put out a dancing robot about 3 weeks ago, and then the Chinese, not to be outdone, they cut somebody's leg off. They had a robot up there, and they cut his leg down to the metal bones. Now, that could have been a human under there with one leg, but I don't think it was. And then so Russia, decides we're going to put out our robot, and they called him. Something like Ivan or some Russian sounding name. He walks out and he raises his hand to wave to the crowd and he gets off balance and he falls down and like the two guys that they're probably dead now. The two guys, the techs on either side, they try to pick him up and a third guy is trying to pull this curtain like this across and the curtain's all like it was like a travesty. Wow. It was hilarious. So, that robot could not do my job. Now that robot maybe in 10 or 20 or 30 years maybe could, but I don't, 68 years old, that ain't my problem. Y'all maybe. So, I worry about somebody that has spent $250,000 in tuition to get a 4-year degree, and then they're an analyst or they're an accountant or something, and what do they do? And my point is, watch these videos and watch this channel because this is a career opportunity for the next 20 or 30 years that is, I won't say it's going away. It can be benefited by AI. I use it for research, and I had a friend just the other day that, and you guys know them. He's a musician, and he was in a van, and the van broke down at 2 a.m. somewhere up in Michigan. Very, like sparsely populated parts of Michigan. I think it was the Upper Peninsula or something or other. And he's calling AAA. He's a member, and nobody's responding. And they got a gig the next day in another town.
We've been there.
So he goes on ChatGPT and starts up a conversation about what he should do. And they found a 24/7, within 30 miles or whatever, repair service. And they came and towed the van away. And so anyway, there's a lot of, exciting things that come out of it. And one of the things I honestly, personally don't know if this is good or bad. I know how I would feel about it, but I saw this headline that said that AI, advanced AI, is going to result in like a 90% unemployment rate, like in 10 years. And supposedly the article was like positive, saying that means humans are going to have like 80 hours of new free time that we wouldn't have, or 80 hours of free time a week.
That's 80 hours of not getting paid.
Well, no, it was saying that it would have to be, it'd have to be some type of base, human, it was socialism basically, which, that's a whole other topic for another day, which, but take that out of the equation because, socialism is great until you run out of everybody else's money. Then it's not so great. So, but let's not get political. Let's just say, okay, is it good to have 80 hours of free time? My wife would go nuts. I know that. I might not, but I would drive her crazy if I was around the house for 80 hours. So, and what's going to happen to the human brain? Just with cell phones and instant gratification and dopamine hits from scrolling mindlessly on Facebook or,
we always say technology always evolved faster than our brains did, and
our society has evolved faster than our.
It's devolved. It's devolved.
Technologically, I guess you could say, but
well, I'm talking about all this social media, unsocial media is just awful. So
we're not meant for that. We're not meant to.
We're not meant to know what's happening in the entire world. But we're meant to be aware of our small community and only have to worry about our small community and let other communities worry about themselves.
Well, and I want to worry about other community. I want to worry about my community. You think a robot is going to care that somebody is coughing upstairs and they might have a problem? They might be in distress. And
that's another thing is I'm sure an AI can emulate empathy, but it can't actually feel it.
Usually empathy, the word empathy and the word landlord doesn't go together.
Well, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. But, you, I feel, are very different than most landlords, as you should be, because there's so many greedy people that don't care if their tenants are happy or not. They just care that they're getting paid, you know? So like you were saying, like most people would just, oh, you didn't pay your rent? Okay, we'll start the eviction process. There's no empathy in that, you know their situations, and I think it's better to help someone out because you would want to be helped out. Like that's the whole
I'd also
point
hate
of empathy.
to have like an AI managing certain processes of my business and then make a decision that I wouldn't have made, and then I feel bad about it because I'm responsible for that. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
So
like I think AI can make a landlord's job easier in terms of like organizing files or like dealing with paperwork, forwarding and whatever. I don't know,
accounts payable, accounts receivable,
right.
Tax accounting associated with that. Yeah, that's all.
But it can't do
anything that has to do
the
with crunching
whole job
numbers
by itself. And also, it wouldn't ever need to do the whole job by itself. It doesn't need money, so it doesn't need to support any sort of lifestyle. So a robot just can't like gain sentience and then go buy a property on its own.
Well, my perspective as a real estate investor is different maybe than some real estate investors and landlords' perspectives. If my investment strategy was to own a property for a short period of time and to flip it for the maximum profit, then I would be a different landlord, for better or worse, than I am today. That's never been my perspective. The book I wrote is called The Long Run, and it's about, all the ups and downs of a 40-year or 4-decade plus real estate career and investing, in real estate. And I own the first property I ever bought. As you guys know, I still own it. And but my perspective, because I'm a long-term investor, is different in handling with my tenants, and particularly tenants that get into trouble and can't pay. If I were investor A, trying to maximize profits and make my balance sheet look good so that I can justify a higher resale price to the next investor, then I would be less patient with tenants. I would probably have more rigid rules. But for me, my perspective has always been, let's look at this from a long-term perspective. And particularly in a case where there's been a tenant that's been with me for a period of time and they've had a great track record as paying on time, and all of a sudden there's something, I will be much more inclined to work with them, particularly if they communicate. If they say, hey, I want to find out somebody's not going to make a payment before the due date. If you say, hey, I'm struggling this month, it's September and I don't know if I can pay October, I'd much rather have that than by the 15th of October they say, you know what, I haven't been able to pay you yet, but, I'm not going to be able to pay you for a while. So that's, I try to educate them to say, let's be a little more open about this. And if somebody says, I can't pay this month, but I can pay next month.
And part of that's just having the relationship with them. Like most landlords, you don't know them, you don't talk to them. We've lived in lots of apartments before, and you never know the name of the landlord. Like it's just whoever their employees are, you sign the papers and you're done. But
might be a robot.
Maybe
at this point.
But you're developing a relationship with your tenants, and so they're more likely to talk to you about stuff and say something like, hey, I lost my job. Like
it doesn't mean I deserve a pat on the back. I don't think I do. What I'm saying is that to me is a part of the strategy, my investment strategy, to honor or to fulfill a desire to have a long-term, successfully viable real estate investment property. And if it meant that I lose a month's rent because I worked with this tenant and it didn't work out 9 out of 10 times, in other words, they don't pay October rent, I let them stay, and then I either have to evict them ultimately in November or December, or they leave without paying me. To me, that's a cost of doing business. That's no different than paying my electric bill for my security lighting or whatever. And I think what it does for me is it basically lets me exhaust any doubt that I have to say, I want to give them the same advantages and benefit of the doubt that I would want if I were in their shoes, because I've been there before. And so for me, over the long haul, that word gets out. He's not some guy up in a skyscraper in Manhattan that, drives a Ferrari or whatever. This is a guy that is willing to sit down face to face and hear the problems. And so what they do is they tell their family and their friends, and 2 years later, somebody comes in my door that says, I want an apartment. I want to live here. I don't know what you have, but I want to live here because I hear you're that kind of a landlord. That has happened multiple times. And that doesn't make me pop my chest out and says it's like I'm fulfilling my own selfish desire to say I'm going to have fewer marketing expenses down the road because I'm going to have the reputation of being more of a caring, and my wife says they run over me. A lot of the tenants run over me, and sometimes it happens. But when that does, I'll take getting run over 9 times out of 10 by somebody that's manipulating that situation to have that one person that I give them what they need to get through a crisis, and then they're with me for 10 more years. And that's happened before.
And
sorry, like you say, you're not just selling apartments, you're selling a lifestyle, and part of that lifestyle is having a landlord that cares.
People are always going to need somewhere to live.
That seems like that's a major part of why people enjoy living here, is because you actually care about, their day to day and the issues they have. And if they're struggling, you kind of work with them, I've never had another landlord that
I think
operates
most
like
landlords
that,
don't do that, because if they don't have a personal relationship with their tenants, it's easy to separate themselves from it. Like if something's not right in front of them, they won't care about it. It takes the humanity out of it a little bit when it's just when your tenant is just a pile of paperwork and you don't know them personally, Right. And that's what AI would think of a tenant if they were in charge of everything. Exactly. It would just be the statistics. It would just be their file.
You hit the nail on the head of something. I was thinking about this potential, discussion last night when I couldn't go to sleep. And, I take pride in creating community within a community, and it might not even involve me. Just take myself out of the equation, and we got neighbors looking out for each other. We got neighbors walking each other's dogs at lunch. I'm really proud of that. It has nothing to do with me. It's just these are good people that are living here, and they're looking out for each other. And if and when there's a crime spree in the neighborhood or whatever, they're like, okay, I'm going to watch out, while you're out of town this weekend, make sure your car's okay. And, to me, that's rare. I enjoy that. And so I get up every day not excited about being a landlord or not excited about being a small property owner. I get excited about getting up every morning to go do something that I love to do and that I really enjoy doing. And it could be digging ditches. And so that the longevity has been largely not so much directly related to being a real estate investor, because there have been bad days where if I had a string of like events that happen, that have been on the bad side of that, I might not be doing this. But for the, what job is perfect? What career is perfect? And, I was in a soulless, godless corporation that it was dog eat dog and everything was about the shareholders. And, I was so ready to get out of that. There's no money. Yeah. I was making really big salaries and had big bonuses. And, I was just gone all the time. I was working crazy, and it was never about what you did, what you just accomplished. Like I would sell a project. We'd buy a real estate deal. We'd renovate it. I called it lipstick on a pig. We'd sell it. We'd make millions of dollars, and I'd be in the chairman's office the next day, and it's like, what are you going to do next? There was never, or what else do you have in the works? What do you, It was never, okay, catch your breath. You've just worked, 80 hours a week for the last 3 years to get to this point. And I realized I was on a treadmill, and I also realized that I was replaceable, not by AI. This was 20 years ago, but by the chairman's children who were, in their 20s or 30s and learning everything. And I also realized that, if it's a corporation owned by a small family and, you think that you're going to earn like being treated like one of the family members, that doesn't help. That doesn't happen either. So any job.
Lucky for them though. They were born into that.
It could be that, you're an amazing artist and you haven't talked about that yet, but that, if that becomes the thing that you become most passionate about, even if you would make less money doing that than modeling or acting.
Right. It's not about that.
And for me, it's, so I sit there and say, okay, I left $250,000 a year salary with bonus where I could, there were years where I made over $500,000. Now that some people are watching this like, that's not, this is in like the 1980s and 90s. It was a lot of money. And I left for no salary. And the first salary that I paid myself was $30,000 a year. And it took 2 years to build the initial business up to a point where I could pay myself. So I had a wife that was working. I'd set some money aside. And to me, that first paycheck, which after the payroll deductions and stuff, it was like, I want to say, I think it was bi-monthly paychecks. And, it was like $1,300. It was like the best. I was so proud when I went to the bank and deposited. This is my money. I earned this. I wasn't subject to having to kiss anybody's butt. I'm putting a bunch of money in the bank, and I'm feeling like I'm never going to live up to whatever the shareholders and family that owned the business, what their expectations were. I was, always away from my family. I was trying to have kids, and it doesn't really help when you're in like Texas and your wife is in Alabama and you're trying to have kids, and it's like I had apartments all over I hated it. And so if I'd have stayed that route, I would have made a lot more money in a short period of time, but I'd either been dead or retired by 50. And now I'm 68 now, and I'm still loving life, still loving work, and I would have never had the longevity that I had. And I'm proud of the career. And I would say anybody that's, Amazon, when just a month ago, Amazon announced they were laying off 30,000 people.
Wow.
One of the most profitable companies in our country. And it's like, and it's not because they're suffering, it's because they're moving to AI. And it's like, and these were people that were these were not like entry-level people that just graduated from college. May have been some of that, but these were people that had been with the corporation for their entire careers, and they're 43, and they have a house payment and 2 car payments, and all of a sudden they're like, okay, we're going to give you like a 30-day severance package. That's really nice, isn't it? And
I mean, Amazon has a history of not caring about the people who work there. So.
But that week, it wasn't just Amazon. That week, it was like 5 or 6 like big corporate conglomerations that were laying off like 10,000 here and 15,000 there. It was all to AI. And now the economy is slowing down, and there's some concerns that, the next 12 months, 18 months is going to be a really rocky road. I'm even in real estate. I'm in the housing industry. I'm hearing like some comparisons to 2008, and in the auto industry also. Some of that subprime stupidness that happened to create the real estate debacle, it's not repeating itself in real estate as much as it is in the car business. And so there's a whole bunch of stuff where, if the car is new and it's worth $72,000, you can finance it for like, 72 months, and you don't have to put a down payment down. As a matter of fact, you can pick your payment. You just pick your payment, which means that the car, when you turn it in or whatever, it's worth a heck of a lot less than the amount you still owe on it. It's crazy. So there's going to be a whole lot, and they were loaning money to people that, a $72,000 car and a payment that's like $1,000 a month that's going to somebody that's like making
$1,000 a month.
I mean, and nobody's worried about that. So, anyway, I would encourage somebody that may have just gotten laid off. Y'all are like young investors, and y'all are trying to navigate the next chapter and what you want to do. And real estate is not that career move. It's just more of a side. You've looked at a number of different real estate investment opportunities, and I think it's more, in your mind, a way to generate passive income while you're doing things that are, and it might grow into something different. But for somebody that is maybe in their 40s or 50s, that they're now standing and, they just got laid off. But not only do they get laid off in their field, but, there's 30,000 other people that got laid off. And, these are people that are making $75,000, $100,000, $150,000 a year. And, they've got to do, they're 40, in their 40s, they're not ready to retire. It's not, it's not something they're going to have to either go to work at a coffee shop, or they're going to have to find a job in the career that everybody's being laid off in, or maybe think about something like this. And I would absolutely do it over again. If I were in my 40s, at this point, I would be doubling my portfolio size right now. And the main macroeconomic reason is that now in, the 2020s, the mindset in Gen X and Gen Z is not only not that you'd never lose money on a house, that your house values always go up. It's like, I don't want a house. I don't want to be tied down to the same house in the same area, and I don't want to have to on the weekends to mow the grass and do.
Yeah, that's a little bit like us.
We'll take a short-term, rental, or we'll live in a Prius.
Yep.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, but it's the mindset is different, and such that I always competed very unfavorably against single-family housing. In other words, I would have a tenant, and they would start out in a 1-bedroom apartment, and then, they'd get a little more, they'd get a raise, get a little more income. They'd move to a 2-bedroom apartment. I never did well with my buildings that had 3-bedroom apartments. And the reason was that they would go into those units, and as soon as they could buy a house or rent a house, they would, single family always won out. And that's no longer the case. I mean, I think that, I have a problem. I need to renovate your old building. There's still some units that I want to rewire and do some upgrades in the kitchens and bathrooms. And I'm full with a waiting list. And so it's like, to do that, they call it MEPs, mechanical, electric, and plumbing. It's better. This is a 2-story building. And it's better to do 2 units at a time, one being on top of the other, so we can run the plumbing and everything through the wall space, and they call those chase space. And so it's like, for me, having a high occupancy right now is an encumbrance, but I'm not worried about it. It just means I get to play this game a little bit longer and still check the box to say that I completely renovated. That just took 42 years to go from start to finish. But we have original wiring in some of the units, as you know, and I want to, before I leave, that was my legacy for that building. I want to do it. So I would, if I were 40 something years ago, I would buy that building. I would be looking for that asset all over the place, within a 50-mile radius where I could self-manage and not have to have a third-party management company. So that might be something for somebody that is struggling with, what do I do next? What's the next chapter? And
yeah. I want to speak to something you mentioned earlier. You said if you had 80 hours of free time a week, you'd go crazy, right?
I think he said his wife would go crazy. I'd
either be dead or my wife would. I'd be dead because my wife killed me, or I'd be dead from boredom.
I don't think the answer to the stresses that humanity faces right now in our modern world is going to be solved by less work necessarily. I mean, maybe a little bit less work, but really I think it's more fulfilling work, right? There's people that are so unfulfilled by their jobs, right?
That's true.
And it just makes them want to kill themselves.
Like when we're working, but we don't think of it like work.
Right.
It's just fun. We would do it for free.
What you do, you feel fulfilled by it and satisfied by what you do every day. And you get up at 6 a.m. to get things done because it feels good. It feels good to get things done. And it didn't feel good to do your job back in the day when you were making however much money for that business, whatever it was. Right. No, it was unfulfilling, I'm sure. So
no, I'd have this level, and it's, I'm sure it's not uncommon. It's probably very common, but I would have this apprehension in the pit of my stomach to go to a job that I didn't believe in their corporate mission. And, I just didn't think that the senior managers were good people. I thought they were evil. Yeah. And it's like, I felt like less good about myself for staying in an environment. But, hell, I had a house payment, I had car payments, I had kids. It was like kid and dogs. Dogs always plural, kid only singular, not because, I wanted 5 kids. Initially we had one.
Oh, wow.
We had to go through infertility is such a blessing. But anyway, no, I wouldn't want that on anybody. And the jobs that I hated the worst were jobs that I felt like I was not being challenged, or I wasn't being given enough rope to either hang myself or to succeed. And that's where I would be if I had 80 hours of free time. I mean, what would I do? So, and what will other, some people will go steal. I mean, there's not going to be some good that's going to come out of that. So,
and I think honestly, that's the place where AI should fall, ideally, is taking the unfulfilling parts of the working life of humans out of it so they can focus on what actually fulfills them and satisfies them.
Which is why we want to go into, real estate in the first place, because if we, create an avenue of passive income, we can focus more on life, like living life, relaxing. And then,
for instance, like you're not a huge fan of having to edit thousands of photos all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I like editing, but
an AI
when it's that much.
To cut down a bit on the editing workload, you can focus on the parts of your job that you actually enjoy doing.
Right, I can shoot more. And that's what we do when we've talked to you before about, like, we shoot weddings sometimes through, like, a third-party company that hires us out, and they take care of everything. So all we have to do is show up the day of and film the wedding. Then we hand over the file. Someone else edits it. Someone else delivers the galleries.
They might already be using AI.
Right. And we get paid like less than it would be a traditional wedding if we were editing. Right.
Yeah,
but
we don't have to edit for a week.
It's a deal that I gladly will take and have taken a bunch in the past because it gives us so much free time, and we can actually enjoy the living part of life.
I see that. I would process it a little differently than you, because y'all are adventurers. I mean, y'all are like the most exciting couple, that I've known, and y'all get like, if you sleep in the same bed more than a month, it's like you get restless. And for me, I'd rather be in that bed every night because I got a really comfortable bed.
I will be at some point, when we decide to have kids, then we'll probably whatever properties we own, just stop renting out one of them and live in it.
Yes. But to your point, I could be excited about AI taking over some of the things that I don't enjoy doing as much
Right.
as a landlord,
Right.
real estate owner, operator. One of them being tax season. Y'all have heard me bitch and gripe.
Yeah.
And my heart rate goes up like I heard just this morning. It's not even Thanksgiving yet. And I heard the first like TurboTax ad on TV, and it's like, oh my
Yeah.
God, I got to start thinking about that.
Like the hairs in the back of your neck.
So
stand up.
in a prior podcast, you like rolled your eyes when I said, when I first got into the business, we were talking about limiting liability through having multiple LLCs that own the actual rental properties. And the good news was you limit your liability from, the ambulance chasers. The bad news is you got to file individual tax returns for every one of those properties. And so I started out, by just taking all my checkbooks to my accountant, and I got a $42,000 bill one year. And it's like, what can I do? I sat down with her. She was, as I mentioned, she was like a high school classmate of mine. She's a lot smarter than I was. She's really, she's like, I don't think she was the valedictorian, but she's closer than, and I was an A student. I'm not going to say that.
Do you think that she was pretty much working solely on your taxes?
No, not at all.
Man, how much money was she making?
Well, she
then?
had she was a manager, so she had 2 or 3 junior accountants, and they were like, it's just, you're looking at somebody, my handwriting is not the greatest in the world. Everybody says I should have been a doctor because based on my signatures, but so they were having to decipher, the data that was on my check and deposit stubs and figure out from that, okay, is this a rental deposit or is this some other deposit from like a consulting fee? It's all, you have to book it differently. And so I sat down with her and after that, and I said, what can I do on my end to mitigate that a little bit? Because it's a shocker. I think my gross income that year was like $100,000. So I spent like 42% of my GDP on accounting fees. And then I had to pay taxes, so it was like, So she said, Rick, you can do your own general ledger data preparation. And so we set up a chart of accounts, and I basically inputted everything and balanced everything before I sent it to her. So I did this initially. There was a software program called Tenant Pro, and it was really cumbersome, particularly for a small operator that had multiple properties like me. And so I struggled with that like for 5 or 6 years. And there were a couple of iterations. It frustrated me so much because you buy the software package it was thousands of dollars. I don't remember how much exactly, but it was that. Wow. And then every year there'd be some amendment or change to it, and you have to, get the add-on pack for another $500 or whatever it was, And so after about, 4 or 5 years of struggling with Tenant Pro, I said, screw this. I'm just going to, and my associates they'll be impressed by me saying this. So I went into Excel and I developed my own spreadsheet, and I'm not a computer person at all, but I developed my own spreadsheet and I've used it for 20 years but it's still cumbersome. I have to do it for every entity, and it's just not, I just dread it. It's not, I don't make any vacation plans in February and March, and my deadline is March 15th now to file. And so even January is, it's not a fun month.
And that's where AI can.
So where AI could really help me is like, do that for
Taking
me.
Care of that,
do that. There's not a whole lot of, there's sometimes where I got to say, okay, can I expense that or do I have to capitalize that? And that might not mean anything to y'all, but if I write a check if I buy a new air conditioning unit, I'm supposed to capitalize that. And so the IRS has a schedule that the bot would know this, the AI would know this. Okay, Rick has to capitalize that over 60 months or 72 months or what, a refrigerator's different than a this or that. So I'd have to code it correctly. And then, the AI program would, say, okay, I can calculate your depreciation because on my building, it's 27 and a half years. But there was about a decade where the IRS had different sliding depreciation schedules, and you could opt for what they called accelerated depreciation, and it could be taken over 15 years. So you buy a $100,000 building, you can depreciate it in 15 years. It was a big tax shelter, but then there's no shelter left at the end. So for a while, I never took the 15-year. There was an either or for 15-year or 19-year depreciation, and I ultimately everything got moved over to 27.5-year depreciation, and that's I think where we still are. So, but most of my properties have depreciated out, and I pay a big tax bill even without selling any of them because my loan payments, any principal reduction that I make is taxable. You don't get the money for it. You get the value add. But man, Hey, Hal, computer, do my taxes for me. Yes. And what I would do at that time is I'd go buy another fourplex.
That's what I say to you, basically.
Yeah, and it wouldn't cost $40,000 either.
And a bot can't do what you and I have. We've been doing due diligence, and I said in the beginning of this podcast that as a landlord that's been in this business 40 years, you'd think I would have seen a little of everything, and maybe I have, but I haven't. I mean, when we crawled up in that attic, and there was that like water tank that was in there, like I think you figured it out. I'm like, I've never seen that.
I assume so, but I'd be curious if we showed like ChatGPT a photo that we took from under that one house that had the wall bowing out, if it would say, "Oh, there's a wall bowing out. That's what you should look at," or if it would just say, "Looks good.
Yes.
Looks like a house.
Looks like the underside of a house."
Yes.
Like I wonder,
And for anybody that is watching this and goes to that video, I was really nervous, and
it was bad
and struggling with what to do. It was the video or the episode was about pre-due diligence. In other words, how do you not go forward spending $10 or $15 or $20,000 just to decide if you're going to make an offer on a property, and you sneak in and you do this, or you get permission. I don't want to ever encourage anybody to trespass, but in this case, one of the tenants, I didn't own the building. One of the tenants basically invited me over because he had a rat problem and his third-party management company was not doing it. And you and I went in there, and I thought we were going to be dealing with spider webs, and it was a lot worse than that. I mean, we saw a lot of stuff, including raw sewage and rat, evidence of rats, and we put a rat trap in there.
About the raw
Glad
sewage
I didn't go down there with you guys.
Yeah.
So he called his third-party manager, and that third-party manager didn't respond. And he did an end run and sent an email to the owner. The owner had literally, when they changed managers, had communicated, and the tenant basically said, "I don't feel comfortable here." Well, she fired that management company, apparently. All this is hearsay from that tenant. But so I feel good that we got a set of eyes on those problems, particularly that one wall. I don't think it's a major expense to fix it, but that wall was a support wall and it was crumbling, and they need to be some support jacks or something.
It would be a major expense if you didn't fix it. So
it could be life-threatening. I mean, if you're in that upstairs apartment, all that weight was bearing on that one wall, and there's a bedroom over there. I mean, you could be asleep one night and then you're under rubble. And of course that's what it's like to live in Kiev, Ukraine right now. And I'm serious. That's a terrible, terrible thing. So, but anyway, I feel like, of all of the jobs that I thought about going into after 4 years of college, that the one that I picked is probably the least susceptible to, at least in the next decade, maybe two, to being replaced by AI. So supplemented by and enhanced by AI, yes. And that's all good, so.
Yeah. I mean, I think the meat and potatoes of this conversation is that the world is changing, and you have either to change with it, or you get left behind.
Or die.
Yeah. I mean,
but there's a cabal at work here. So you can't not turn on your TV now or Spotify or whatever and hear somebody basically portraying or conveying that message that AI is here, it's here for good, and you either get on board or you die or you get left behind.
I'm not saying get on board with AI, but use it to your advantage, because it'll work against you if you don't use it to your advantage. Yeah.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see all the billions of dollars that have been thrown into these data centers and all this infrastructure and stuff. It's just, you guys were maybe alive, but not, y'all were maybe still in diapers when the .com bubble burst, and that was a crazy time. And this is going to dwarf that, at least in my humble opinion. But it doesn't affect me. I mean, I'm not invested in these tech stocks.
I think you're lucky to be on the tail end of your career, and you don't have to face the brunt of this when it gets really bad.
Yeah.
Well, I got a 1-year-old grandson who, what's he going to do? Is he going to go to college? Why go? And I worry about the universities and secondary education. What's the purpose now? What's the purpose of spending? It's ridiculous to spend $250,000 to get a 4-year degree. And then you can't get a job for a year, and you're working at a coffee shop. You could have gone to work in the coffee shop to start with, or you should have watched Better Bettors and bought that fourplex, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
you don't need to go to college if you're going down this route necessarily.
Yeah. I mean, we had a math teacher in high school, and even back then he was telling us the only way to get rich in this country is real estate. As a regular person
in general,
starting at the bottom, middle class, you're not going to become a billionaire. You're not going to own a huge mega business conglomerate. You have to get into real estate if you want to make anything for yourself.
And even with just being an entrepreneur, you can, but you kind of have to get really lucky.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to be an
like
entrepreneur and start a business, you have to secure funding from somebody,
Right.
you know, and I mean, you have to have a good idea and you have to have them think it's a good idea as well.
Yeah, you can't just be like, I'm going to be an entrepreneur and then not know what business to start,
But
not know what product to produce.
I would really be interested in what ChatGPT would tell us about how many $1 million plus businesses that were started by an entrepreneur are still run and directed and largely owned entirely by that same person.
And there was a time, you know, that, and I think the people who are billionaires now that didn't come from wealth already, that got lucky or had a good product idea, like that moment in history, I feel like has passed because now everything's made. Yeah. It's all here now, you know, like.
Yeah. And like the cutting edge really seems to be AI, and then AI is going to do it. It's not us, you know, so.
Well, back to, you know, why I got in the business and why I'm still in the business. I never got into it to become a millionaire or a billionaire or anything. That was never an objective. Maybe it should have been. And, you know, maybe some people are watching this laughing, this guy's the dumbest idiot on the planet. But I got into the business because it was fulfilling to me. And I like I said, I think I told you one time on another podcast, I was a model builder. I'd build dozens of models every year.
I would too.
You know, and it was just, you know,
I actually considered, I saw one at Walmart that was kind of cool. I wanted to get for my birthday.
This is like that. I mean, so this is the same thing. And so, yeah, I want to make money doing it, but I want to be more than that. I want to be fulfilled by it. And I do feel like, unlike, you know, I said I have trial lawyer friends and I kid them all the time, but they're parasites. You know, what do they create? What do they make? They make money for themselves off somebody else's misfortune.
Right, it's just greed.
And, you know, I don't want to be that person. I want to go into the grave, and I'm going to be cremated. I'm not going to be buried, but I want to go into my next gig, you know, feeling like I'd created something or I'd contributed something to society. And I feel like this is you can have a scumbag landlord that, you know, does all kinds of awful stuff. Yeah, that's true. But for me, you know, I don't think there's enough stories about landlords and I'm one of a gazillion landlords that are good landlords and passionate landlords. And,
well, I haven't met them. I've only ever met you, I guess.
Well, you've only lived in one apartment, and it's mine.
Well, we've lived with friends in their apartments and stuff.
We've just never paid rent.
We try our best not to.
Well, you know, there'd be a limit to how long I would put up with that too. You know. So anyway, but y'all are great, and I'm excited for y'all to go on this next mission, and I can't wait to hear. We're going to have a podcast when you guys give the big reveal about what real estate option or investment option and when, or if that's even for you. It may not be, you know. I can't wait to hear that.
We've got to decide.
That's right. We still haven't quite got our minds made up
yet. Well, you have
Yeah.
some time. 23, you got 2 years to be. I was 25.
Maybe we'll beat you. Maybe not. I don't know.
Well, I was 25 when I did the first, so no pressure.
That sounds right.
I do feel like the earlier that we can, get a property in our portfolio, obviously the earlier we can start earning passive income and keep traveling while we're young. Because I still plan on owning a property while we're young.
Yes, because
we need to get the traveling out of our system.
And the first one is always the hardest.
Yeah.
I mean, it always takes the most legwork, and it's the most sleepless nights come with your first investment. And so, but it's been a great career for me. I would really be excited if y'all chose that path, at least as a part of what you're doing. And
even if we only have one property for our whole life and we supplement with other things, like I'd still be happy with. I'm sure whatever we do, we'll feel like it was the right choice. So.
You're too young to remember the Lay's potato chip commercials.
I don't know.
I bet you can't eat just one. I bet you can't buy just one. You'll buy one and it'll work.
We're Gen Z.
You'll either buy one and it won't work, and you're like, Rick's I'm mad at him.
Yeah.
He should have never steered us in that. Or you'll buy it and you're like, man, this is the thing. And
I'm only a year older than you, but I feel like the way that I grew up, I feel like I grew up in the 90s. And then, and that's crazy too.
Because your parents were so old.
I know, probably so. But like, I remember the time before everything, and then somehow you don't remember. You have a bad memory in general. But we get to see, I think, the most change that there's ever been in human history is going to be like
in our lifetime.
and then maybe after that humanity will be done. Who knows what's going to happen?
Well, to wrap up, like with AI, whether it's good or it's bad, in your perspective, there are always people that do very well and become successful because they make lemonade out of lemons. And
right.
That's what I'm trying to do with
AI.
AI.
You have to change when the times change.
So, and if you got laid off recently to AI, we're sorry for that, but it could be an opportunity in disguise. Could be a mixed blessing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hang in there.
I'm glad we got to have this conversation. We should talk more about it.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe. This channel is definitely going to be an asset for you guys to combat AI and learn about how you could possibly, become an investor. So thank you for watching.
We've got to find our place in this world.